Hey guys, welcome back for another video here on Build Order Win. My name is The Truth, and today we're going to be doing an introductory video to the Protoss versus Terran matchup. In this video, I'm just going to go over sort of the fundamentals and basics to the matchup, and I don't know, we'll see. I'm just sort of winging this, to be honest, but I just want to cover each phase, like the early game, mid game, late game, and the real reason I want to make these videos is so that way when you go into watching my future build order videos in this particular matchup, you will have a better understanding as to why I'm doing some of the sort of things that I am doing, like why the build makes sense. So let's just go ahead and get started. So for Protoss versus Terran, I guess we'll just go down and sort of like step by step. So first things first, scouting. In this matchup, I would say that scouting is less important than it is in matchups versus Zerg and versus Protoss. But depending on what build you're doing, it can be very important for sure. And as you noticed in this game, I am scouting. Now, in this particular replay, I go for Blink Stalkers into Colossus. This is probably the build that... This is one of the builds where you really don't need a probe scout with, because you're going to usually do the same thing no matter what you scout. Assuming that your opponent isn't doing like some sort of 2 barracks proxy sort of rush. Or something along those lines. But, okay, so one thing, this is a Reaper wall. I guess I'll point that out. It's very good wall versus Reapers. But yeah, so the way this matchup normally goes, okay, is the Terran player will open with a Reaper expand, or they'll go for a gas first and get a factory for early drop harass. So, medevac drop. Those are your 2 most popular openings. In the lower leagues, I'm sure there's more abundance of just ridiculous builds that you'll see, like proxy barracks, 1 base all-ins. I'm sure those are more popular than I'm used to seeing. Regardless, this is the standard opening that I like to go for. 1 gas, gateway, cyber, into a nexus, and then add a gas. You can do a lot of builds off of this. It's very safe, or it's safe enough, I guess, is the key. And but you still don't limit your tech options. The other option for the Protoss player is to go for 2 gas before a nexus, and this just allows you to get into your tech quicker, which means that you can do more. You can have it be more impactful in terms of harassment that you can do and whatnot, but also means that you have to do more with it, because you are cutting your economy a little bit. So, okay. I'm not really interested in what's going on in this game. I'm just trying to talk about this matchup as a whole. So, in this matchup, I guess a few important things are, you of course have to be cautious of early attacks that could come, such as Wood Mine drops, for instance, or Marine pushes around 8 minutes, 9 minutes. But it's also, so, you know, you gotta stay defended versus that sort of stuff, but you also want to stay ahead in workers versus the Terran player. It's very important to do this, for sure. I actually want to look at the units tab, and you'll notice that my worker count is always going to be higher than his in these early stages, than actually throughout most of the game, to be honest. But you really want it to be, I don't know, at least 6 or 7 workers above your opponent. Especially if they're going for a factory opening. So, okay. So going into the mid-game versus Terran, typically you'll see a lot of players go for Blink Stalkers and Colossus. There's a lot of stuff you can do despite popular belief. But typically, all-ins versus Terran on 2 bases don't really work that well, to be honest. I think, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure there are some that work. Blink Stalker all-ins used to be really popular, but anyway, I don't want to get too much into that. So, but yeah, going into the mid game, the next thing you really worry about versus Terran is their drop potential. And because of this, it can be difficult to take a third base. And so yeah, most of your builds are gonna, the primary focus is you want to tech up, you want to get a third base, but you also want to stay safe versus drop. So those are your three concerns. Alright, so let's go ahead and speed up so you'll have more talking points. Yeah, so the mid game is really just, it's very easy to stay defensive versus Terran. Especially since if you decide to do some aggressive moves, it's very easy for the Terran player to just counterattack you and deal a lot of damage very easily. So typically the decisions as Protoss isn't so much how can I be aggressive at this stage, it's what do I want to do at home. And so usually you'll see players either go for quick upgrades, they'll try to tech quickly, or they're going to try to take a third base quickly. And so usually when they choose one of those options, they sacrifice the other two. However, you'll see on this channel that there are some of my build orders that accomplish two of those options at once, which is you're not really capable of doing so with this Blink Stalker Colossus style. Okay, really versus Terran, you do need some form of AoE. It's very difficult to play without it, so Colossus or Storm. There are ways to, I think, and I think in Legacy of the Void, I don't want to talk about Legacy of the Void that much at all, but I think in Legacy of the Void it'll be very possible to play without AoE versus Terran. Just my sort of early assumptions. But okay. And then I guess going into the late game versus Terran, the things to worry about aren't so much taking a fourth base. It's no longer so much staying safe versus drops, because you should have that covered already. Like, you should have taken care of that by then. But I think really it's... I think it really just comes down to getting High Templar quickly enough if your opponent is going to go for an SCV pull all in. I think that's very important. And then just having a good composition, a good rounded out composition. You don't want to have a bunch of Colossus without Blink Stalkers all of a sudden. You don't want like only one High Templar or no sentries in your army, that sort of stuff. And I think one of the key things while playing versus Terran is having High Templars scattered around the map for sure. Let's actually speed this this replay up because it's lagging behind. I don't want to spend too much time with this introduction. This is really just to cover the matchup and not get too much into anything. I'll be doing that in future videos. Okay, I guess one thing I didn't notice is that going from the mid game to the late game, the Terran player has two options usually. Actually, I guess they have three options. The most popular is to go from 3 barracks, 1 factory, and 1 starport, and then they'll add on their third command center. I just realized this volume might be too loud. Yeah, let's lower that a little bit. Okay, anyway, so another option that they could do is add on 2 extra barracks before taking a third command center, and then their last option is to get a third command center after 1 barracks. And so it's important to scout for these things to react. Even if you scout that they go for a fast third CC, you really can't punish it all that much unless your build order is very aggressive already, or unless your build order is an all-in, but I mean you're blind countering it at that point. Going into the late game, the Terran player is typically going to look to try to be really aggressive before you can get a super death ball up. After that stage, typically the Terran player is going to want to add on more command centers and sacrifice SCVs. And the reason for this is so that they can have a really high army supply while maintaining their same economy by dropping mules, of course. Okay, one thing that is really important versus Terran is your map vision. So, most players like to use observers to accomplish this. I like to use pylons and observers. So you'll notice I have one here, one observer here. These are to scout for the most typical army movements. Also the army movements that I feel like pylons can't really cover for because they'll just kill them really easily and whatnot. And then just, there's blind spots for sure. And you'll see I'm trying to make a pylon here. I could even make one here to be super safe, but you just don't want blind spots where a Doom Drop can come in and kill you. Even though you have this map vision, you still want defenses ready. 2 cannons, a cannon High Templar. I guess we'll talk about the basic army positioning. So typically versus Terran, I like to have my Mothership Core to be able to overcharge at least the main or the natural. And so you'll see it's right in between both. I don't hotkey it with my army. And then my army is able to defend my natural as well as my third base. This is not going to be the same thing for every map, but typically the Terran ground army will have the easiest time accessing your natural and third base, and therefore you want your main army there to defend both. And then they'll have probably the easiest time, because of that, to drop your main or natural. So let's go ahead and continue on. So he's going to go for a Doom Drop here. I don't think I spotted this, but I'm not really worried about the play-by-play in this game. But having Warpins ready is very important as well. Okay. And so I think I've covered pretty much everything I wanted to for sort of an introduction to this matchup. I'm just looking around to see if I've missed anything. Typically you stay in one robotics facility for basically the entire game. If you ever want to add more, I would say wait until the very earliest you should do it is when you have 3 bases fully saturated. Unless you're going for some sort of special build order, which calls for more than 1 robo. Typically, I like to either open with 1 quick forge or 2 forge that come in a little bit later, like around the 10-minute mark, for instance. And okay. I think this covers pretty much everything. Mid-game harassment as a Protoss player isn't very viable unless your build order is designed to do it. So Blink Stalkers is a good way to do mid-game harassment. Going for Warp Prism drops is a good way to do mid-game harassment with Storm or Charge Lots. But the Warp Prism option does leave you a bit exposed to counterattacks, as I mentioned. And then in the late game, Warp Prisms are great, Storm Drops are okay, and then Pylons, to outside of their third base especially, are very useful to warp in Charge Lots and just run them into their mineral line. But, okay. Alright, well, I think that's going to wrap up this video. I hope this helps. I hope this has helped anyone that's watched it, really. It'll probably be most useful for those in that are like below Diamond League, I suppose. But okay. I guess the last thing that I can just throw out there is that having High Templar scattered everywhere is very, very good. Let me just go to Units tab right now. So I have 7 High Templar on the map, and let's just click through them. I only have 3 on my army. This is for harassment. I know it looks weird, but whatever. 1's here. Alright, now they're all just... I have 8 on the map. That was not 8 High Templar, but whatever. So normally you have like 1 at your third, 1 at your main. Anywhere that's exposed to drops. And then the good thing about that is that you can... When you're about to take a big fight in the late game, you can select all of your army with your Select All Army hotkey. And then just have High Templar running in from every direction to get your flank storms. And that's really how you win a lot of fights versus Terran in the late game. But okay, that's going to wrap up this video. I hope that you guys learned something from it, have something to take away. And yeah, so hopefully this also helps sort of explain why my PvT builders make a bit more sense now. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next time.